My nose is running. Ugh. I feel like my nose is never runny until I do my makeup, and then it runs, and then my nose looks like Rudolph. So at least it's festive. Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel. I am so excited for today's video. I am bringing you another eyeshadow palette themed video. I will still be doing a palette week at the end of the year, but I did want to sprinkle in some other palette videos from here until the end of the year. So today I have all of my indie brand eyeshadow palettes sitting in front of me. I believe I have 38 total. There are 3 that are newer to my collection that I won't be reviewing today or ranking for you today because I have yet to try them enough to actually fairly rank them. But I do have 35 indie eyeshadow palettes to rank for you guys today, all the way from my least favorite to my most favorite. I am so excited for this. I would love if you guys would leave me your favorite indie brands or indie eyeshadow palette recommendations that you have in the comments below. I'm always looking to test and try out new indie eyeshadows. And I will say, so going into this ranking, I thought about ranking just indie eyeshadow formulas, and then like I literally could not decide. So I was like, okay, maybe it'll be easier if I just like rank all of my indie eyeshadow palettes. And I had so much trouble actually ranking my indie eyeshadow palettes. And I think a lot of that is because when I am using indie brand eyeshadows, or when I get super excited about indie eyeshadows, it's typically because there's like a duochrome or a multi-chrome that's like super unique and super special that might not be something I wear on an everyday basis, but it's like a super special shade, or maybe it's like a unique color story, whatever it may be. You'll actually find there's quite a few more neutral eyeshadow palettes that rank towards the bottom because, again, when I am buying from indie brands, I'm usually not looking for like a neutral eyeshadow palette. Regardless, I have 35 eyeshadow palettes to rank for you guys today. If you are excited about this, stay tuned. First, if you have yet to subscribe to my channel and you like project painting content or just chit-chatting about makeup, I would love if you would consider subscribing before moving on. And other than that, let's jump into the video. All right, guys, I have like stacks of eyeshadow in front of me, and like I said, I struggled to rank these. I'm gonna try and give you like my best explanation while making this video not 10,000 years long, but we're gonna start with my number 35. I'm sure at some point within this video, I will lose track of what number we're on. When I was editing my Natasha Denona brand ranking, I was like, girlfriend, you can't keep count of anything to save your life. So if I lose track, lose count, I'll try and post the number down below. But coming in at number 35, I have this palette right here. This is the Hauntingly Glamorous palette. And at the time that I purchased this, the brand was Alien Cosmetics, who I believe is now Unearthly Cosmetics. The reason I am ranking this one at the bottom is this is, I don't want to say like the least cohesive color story in all of these palettes, but to me, I just feel creatively stuck when I look at this palette. Now, I am no makeup expert, I am no eyeshadow palette expert, especially when it comes to like creating creative looks, and this just leaves me stuck. I purchased this right after I purchased the Alien Cosmetics Not Normal palette, and really the packaging, like the artwork and stuff, the whole aesthetic of the palette is kind of what drew me in, not necessarily like the shadows inside. So that's why I purchased this palette, and I have barely reached for this just because this palette intimidates and scares me. I do want to create a look, like I really want to use this periwinkle shade, but this one is going to be my number 35. And then coming in at number 34 is my only palette from Nomad. And anytime I talk about Nomad Cosmetics, I say I need to try another palette from them because I have heard that the eyeshadow formula for Nomad gets better with every palette release. And there's also been color stories that they have released that definitely intrigue me more than the palette I own, which is the Iceland Fire and Ice palette. It's color story for me with this, but then with some of the shades, I just find they fade really quickly and they don't have a great staying power, especially some of the like more shimmer metallic shades. Like I just don't feel like they stay on my eye like I would like them to, and the quality just wasn't top notch for me. So that's why this is my number 34. Coming in at number 33, I have this one from Odin's Eye, and I will say Odin's Eye, oh, that's right. I forgot I wanted to give honorable mention to the 3 palettes that I that I won't be ranking, 2 of them being Oden's Eye Cosmetics. So I did purchase the Christmas and the Christmas Eve palette. I'll show them super quick. I really want them to restock this, but I don't think they are. This is the Christmas Eve. As I was trying to say, Oden's Eye makes one of my favorite eyeshadow formulas. Like, I just love their formula. I get so excited about every single release that they come out with. This is the this is the Christmas palette. And I just love Oden's Eye. Like, I feel like you truly cannot go wrong. If there's a color story and there's a palette that speaks to you, I would say grab that right away. And then the other palette I wanted to give an honorable mention to is the Alter Ego Harmony palette. They did send this to me. This is a dupe for the Natasha Denona Retro palette, but I have yet to test that one out as well. So those are my honorable mentions. Now back to normal programming. Coming in at number 33, I have the Saga Freya palette from Oden's Eye. And first of all, the packaging on this is a little bit bulkier than the normal Oden's Eye. Not a huge deal, but I was really excited about this palette, and I will say this shade was the shade I was most excited for, and this ended up being more like textured, more like a ColourPop Super Shock than I expected, and it definitely isn't as punchy as I was expecting the shade to be, so that was a little bit of a bummer. I do really like the shade Amber. Now this is a really punchy, like golden shade, and I also like Pink Ice, but aside from that, the like red and oranges just aren't like my typical everyday go-to eyeshadow. You do have a really beautiful like pinky purple shade, and then you have some really solid just like browns, so I can get use out of the palette. I just didn't love it as much as I thought I was going to. That's why I'm ranking that one at number 33. Coming in at number 32, I have this one from Kaleidos. Kaleidos makes another formula, eyeshadow formula that I love. You'll see some of their palettes ranked much higher. This is the Futurism 6. The Lunar Lavender, and for me this is just a color story thing. That's why I'm ranking this one lower. I just don't find myself reaching for a purple palette, especially like a true like purple palette, all that frequently. So that one's gonna be my number 32. Coming in at number 31, I have the Ace Beauté Falling For You palette. Now I will say, in terms of quality, this is a really solid palette. I was actually really impressed with the quality of the eyeshadows in this palette. It really comes down to mostly just like a color story that I'm not going to reach for all that often, although I do really like the pink mauve tone shades in this and this green shade. For some reason, I feel like I'm just intimidated by palettes that have like these bright punchy reds and oranges, and that's really the only explanation I have for why this one is ranking at number 31. Quality, really solid. So if you like the color story, like I would say like quality is there, go for it, but for me it's just not something that gets me super creatively, and I don't even want to say creatively inspired. I feel intimidated by the color story. Coming in at number 30, I have this one from M Cosmetics. This is the Divine Skies eyeshadow palette. So this is a cute little like pocket palette, like a little mini 6-pan eyeshadow palette, and I do like this palette. I just feel like I purchased this at a time that I feel like I was hearing a ton about M Cosmetics, so I was super excited for it, and I just haven't reached for it all that much. It is a more monochromatic palette. You only have 6 shades, so your options are rather limited, but if I was traveling, this would be a palette I would think about taking with me. The packaging is really sturdy, and I feel like the shadows, like it's not something I would be worried about traveling with. Good quality, just not super inspired by the color story like I am a lot of my other indie brand palettes, so that's why that one's ranking at 30. Then coming in at number 29 is my Alter Ego Canyon palette. This is one that it's just, I have these shades in so many other palettes that I don't necessarily like need this eyeshadow palette. The quality is fine. In fact, I feel like the quality of Alter Ego eyeshadows are actually really good. This is a dupe for the Natasha Denona bronze palette, and so far this has satisfied my need for these bronze tone shades. So I haven't purchased the Natasha Denona bronze palette, so it's served its purpose in that. Kind of just like what I was saying with indie brand eyeshadows, I get super excited about the uniqueness of color story and like shades, like color story and like textures, or just different finishes throughout the eyeshadows. So that's why I ranked that one a little lower. Coming in at number 28, you guys are gonna laugh when you see that there is a bright red and orange in this Oden's Eye Verdandi eyeshadow palette. This is another 6-pan palette. I like that Oden's Eye releases these 6-pan palettes from time to time. I really like the textured foiled shades. They are super punchy, super intense, but for this palette I just feel a little bit stuck in what I can create due to like the limitations of the 6 eyeshadow pans and the shades inside. So that's why I'm ranking this one at number 28. And then in that same vein, I have this one coming in at number 27. It is the Oden's Eye Alva 2 Mini Forest palette. Really enjoy this one, but again, just feel limited by the 6 shades and a little bit creatively blocked in terms of what my mind can create in terms of looks. But I think Oden's Eye has such a solid, like, foiled, punchy formula. And I'm not saying like every single foiled shade is the same texture and formula. In fact, I feel like they have quite a variety of different textures and formulas. Love this blue. It's actually a really beautiful, I don't always go for bright blues, but it's actually a really beautiful metallic foiled blue. There's a green and a pink in here, and then there's a really beautiful like yellow gold as well. Honestly, I could have done without the 2 matte shades in this and had this just be like a foiled metallic mini 6-pan palette that I used solely as a companion palette, because I already am using this as a companion palette. For me, I don't feel like I can get a full look out of this, so I pair it with other palettes. So I guess for me, I would have just preferred to swap out the 2 mattes for 2 other like foiled shades, but that's just my opinion. I think we're on 26. Coming in at 26 is the other palette I have from Alien Cosmetics. Again, now I believe Unearthly Cosmetics. This is the Alien Cosmetics Not Normal eyeshadow palette. I only purchased this palette because I had to have this packaging. Like, I literally had to have it. Now, I will say I actually do like the color story inside. It gives me grungy subculture vibes. And for some bright shades, like the purple and green, I actually think perform quite well. I also really like the shade Sage. Love all of the metallic foiled shades in this palette as well. I just don't reach for this that often because these are not my everyday shades, but this would be my number 26. Coming in at number 25, I have another Kaleidos palette. This is the Futurism 3 Astro Pink. I again love the Kaleidos formula. I just don't find myself super inspired to reach for this on a very frequent basis. Although I will say I do really love the 2 shimmer shades in here. And then these are some really great everyday mattes, especially just if it's like a one shadow and done in the crease. This offers me like those great options. So it's not like I would ever declutter this palette. And again, great quality. I just don't reach for it all that frequently, so I couldn't rank it any higher. Coming in at number 24, I would consider Vive Cosmetics to be indie. I know it's available on Cult Beauty, but I thought I would include this in this palette. So this is the Muse palette. Now, this is a huge eyeshadow palette. This is much larger than I was expecting when I ordered this. I was in a very like mauve toned sort of mood when I purchased this, and it is a more expensive eyeshadow palette. I don't necessarily know that I feel like if I I don't know that I feel like the price is justified. It's a good formula, but it's nothing earth-shattering and nothing great in my opinion. I can still get some really beautiful looks with this. But again, when it comes to indie brands, I'm really looking for those special formulas, which this doesn't necessarily have anything special about it. So that's why I'm ranking that at 24. Coming in at number 23, I have this palette. This is the Druid palette from Fantasy Cosmetica. So this is another very grungy palette. I love the color story. I think it's so fun. A couple of my shades did come shattered, but I easily just like repressed them back into the pan. I really, really, really enjoy the foiled shades. The mattes from this palette, this is my only experience with Fantasy Cosmetica, are a little bit dry, but they still perform fine on the eyes. It's just, it takes a little bit more building and a little bit more blending, but I love the like specialer shades from this palette, and I'm excited to continue to play around. They recently released another palette and the color story looked so beautiful, and I'm very interested in potentially picking that one up as well. I believe we are on 23. And my number 23 is the Lunar Beauty Moonspell palette. This is what this palette looks like. A really fun, kind of interesting color story. Not something I reach for on a very frequent basis, but I do love that we have a row of, like a neutral row as well. So I can reach for this to create neutral looks. This just doesn't have a formula that's super special in my opinion. Again, not anything earth-shattering and groundbreaking, which I feel like you can get from a lot of indie brands. So that's why that one is ranking at 23. And then 22 is another Lunar Beauty palette. This is my Eternal Eclipse palette. I really love this palette. I think it's beautiful, but the shades that I love in here, I likely can find similar dupes in other palettes. Again, nothing like earth-shatteringly special, no like multi-chromes throughout here, so still love this palette, but if I'm ranking like against all indie shadows, I'm like, okay, I'm holding it to a higher standard in terms of like eyeshadow formula for like the specialness, if that makes sense. Kind of in that same vein, I have the Artemis Alter Ego palette. This is a dupe for the Metropolis palette, which I just talked about in a palette regrets video. Didn't realize that you can still get the Metropolis palette on the Natasha Denona website, and I hope it goes on some sort of Black Friday deal. This video might actually be being posted on Black Friday, so we'll see. I actually really enjoy this palette, this color story. There's tons of different textures. There's like cream to matte shadows. There's different textures amongst the foiled and metallic shades. It's just not like an indie brand special color story. Now every day, like this palette is great for me, and I really love the packaging on this palette specifically. It's like heavy, much heavier than like some of the newer Alter Ego palettes. Like I wish there was more palettes that had a little bit heavier packaging. What I'm trying to say is this is a great palette, but I have some other more special color stories throughout my indie collection. That's why I'm ranking that one at number 23. No, now I feel like we're at like 19. Oh my gosh. I don't know what number we're at. We're gonna have to post it on the screen. Next up, for me, this is coming down to color story in the opposite direction of me talking about neutrals. This is the Glamlight Cake palette, and this is a bright rainbow palette. Now, if you need a rainbow palette, I would highly recommend this. Great quality. I don't find anything super like patchy to blend out. I don't have trouble with any of the shades, which is really saying something for such a bright, vibrant palette. That being said, it's very rare that I do colorful looks these days, so I just don't find myself reaching for this palette that much. And that's why I'm ranking it lower, but I like love the metallic shades as well. They're super punchy, super vibrant. You truly can't go wrong. I'm just not reaching for a rainbow palette on an everyday basis. Then I have the Menagerie Pastel Pup palette. This is a great, cute little pastel palette, and I do find the pastels work really well, considering that pastels are sometimes harder to formulate. I absolutely love the shade Snowball. It's this really beautiful metallic, like aqua snowy blue sort of shade. I love that shade, and I really like the addition of the white and the black as well. It definitely gives this palette more depth and dimension and just flexibility. I just, again, don't reach for pastels all that often. Another palette that I like really love, I just don't reach for this color story that frequently, it's the Sugar Pill Fun Size Mini Color Palette. This is an all matte palette, and it's a cute little like pastel, neon pastel, which I feel like that's kind of like an oxymoron, but just this fun little palette. This was like my first, aside from maybe I purchased the Huda Electric Obsessions palette first, this is my first real introduction to like colored eyeshadows, and this kind of made me fall in love with just, not even fall in love, this made me want to experiment more with color, and I just have super fond memories of this being one of my more colorful palettes. I love that it's a little pocket sized palette, and I just truly think you can't go wrong with this one. I'm just not reaching for this color story that often. I feel like I'm gonna sound like a broken record with that. Next up, I have this one from Kaleidos. I love and adore this palette. It's just the color story, again, I feel a little bit limited, but I will say I love using these three shades to create like a beautiful like pinky mauve look. Like it's one of my go-tos if I want a solid, easy, like I know the exact look. I've repeated the look before and I love it every single time. I'm a little bit intimidated by the mint shades. They perform really well, but I just never have created a mint look that I love. And then I love the green, the grungy greens at the end as well. Great quality, really cute packaging. I think like such a fun one from Kaleidos. So I think we're at number 17-ish. And then right above that is another Kaleidos palette. This is the Escape Pod, and I rank this one a little bit higher than the Flower Punk palette because I love all of the shimmers in here. I love to do an inner corner highlight with Starlight Santana. I love the green shades in here. I really love the purple in here too if I'm doing like like a holographic purple sort of look. Like I love this shade, and I actually really like this pink amaretto as well. The matte shadows perform really well. Again, I'm not reaching for like rainbow shades all that frequently, but I actually really love Soiree, as well as this blue here. Oh, I kind of want to like pull this out and do a look with this blue. I'm gonna set this aside and I'm gonna try and do a blue look. Keep an eye out for a blue look. We'll see if you don't see a blue look, it definitely didn't go well. I'm gonna set that back there. I think we're on number 14. So coming in at number 14, I have this one from What's Up Beauty. This is the Geodes eyeshadow palette, and for me, it is the shimmer shades in this palette that I love. The matte shades are fine, don't get me wrong, but I more use this as a companion palette. Like I'll do a neutral look, and I used Citrine as like a pop of yellow in the inner corner so much this past summer. It was like one of my favorite things to do, but I also like, I really like every single shimmer shade within this palette. I was super impressed with this eyeshadow palette just because I hadn't heard of What's Up Beauty before. I was kind of like, is this gonna be good quality? And I actually really enjoy the quality in this eyeshadow palette. I think it's really good. So that would be my number 14. Coming in at number 13, I have another one from Glamlight. This is the Ice Cream Dream palette, and this is a kind of bright pastel. Again, I know that's kind of like an oxymoron, but another like pastel-y sort of palette. I have no qualms about this palette. I think it's such phenomenal quality, especially for such bright, vibrant, colorful shades. I really should pull this out and have some more fun with this as well. Maybe I'll have to set this one aside because I feel like Honey Lavender and Cookie Monster could pair really well with the blue I want to use from the Kaleidos palette. But the metallic, like foiled shades from Glamlight as well, they're just so good. Like find yourself a palette from Glamlight that you're interested in and buy it, because I feel like Glamlight has such a good formula. All right, are we on 13? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Coming in at number 12, I have another one from Odin's Eye. Like I said, I love Odin's Eye. So this is the Elva eyeshadow palette, and this is such a beautiful like springtime palette. Love the mauve tones in here, but love this like pop of like yellows. I just think that's such a fun addition. There's quite a few different textures throughout the foiled metallic shimmer shades, and I just love Odin's Eye. I truly love their formula. And then coming in at number 11, I have the Solman palette, which my favorite shade in this palette has broke. It was this really beautiful green shade. I always compared it to the green from the Bronze Seduction palette by Pat McGrath. I think this is such a unique color story, and this is a color story that typically, like for myself, I feel like I would look into this and be really stuck, but I actually just feel like just warmth in my heart when I look at this, and I feel creatively inspired with this palette. I love the like rusty sort of like yellow. These two shades are really beautiful. I love the addition of the lavender, like periwinkle and lavender are like one of my favorite colors ever, so I just love that as well. That would be my number 11. Coming in at number 10, I have this one from Clarity Cosmetics. This is the So Mermazing eyeshadow palette. This is a pastel eyeshadow palette, and while I do love the pastel mattes in this palette, what really takes the cake for me, shockingly enough, is all of these special metallic formulas. All of them I love. Like this Oh Ship shade, I don't want to swatch because I don't have anything to wipe my hands off with, but I love this shade so much. It's just like so wet looking, and you can use it as a lid topper. It's like not doing it justice on camera. It's almost like green with like a green and silver flip, but then there's like a little bit of like teal in it. It's so pretty. Literally all of the, like this palette is worth it just for the like special metallic shades, in my opinion. Coming in at number 9, I know I said like I typically, when it comes to indie brand eyeshadows, I'm not looking for a neutral palette, but this one from Glamlight, the Chocolate Martini palette, I absolutely love. This is like a comfort palette for me. I love every single look that I create with this one, and I feel like even though it looks like a neutral palette, there's actually a lot of depth and variety that you can do with this. It looks even more unique in person, as opposed to like when I saw the teaser photos of this, I was like, that looks kind of boring. But in person, there's a lot of like differentiation between some of these shades that look really similar on screen. And I just love that one. I can't rave about that one enough. Coming in at number 8, I have the Sydney Grace Tiny Marvels palette. This is my only experience with Sydney Grace shadows, but such good quality. I love the metallic shades. They are so punchy on the eyes, but the mattes are also just very easy to blend, very easy to work with. I love that there are neutral shades in this, but then there's fun pops of color as well. And I just think it's such a unique, interesting color story. I love the artwork on the front. 10 out of 10, such a great job with that palette. That would be my number 8. Coming in at number 7, another one from Odin's Eye. Can you tell that I love Odin's Eye? This is the Norns eyeshadow palette. Now this is a little bit deeper than I typically like to go, and while I think the mattes perform just fine, I really love this palette for the metallics and the shimmers, as I keep saying. I mostly use this as a companion palette and reach into this for Amber Place. I love Optimism is beautiful. Pink Chameleon I love as an inner corner highlight, and then I really like Hallucination, Self, and Charming as well. Charming, this, I'm gonna set this blue aside too. I feel like I should set, we're gonna see what sort of blue look I come up with. Hopefully it's not a disaster, but that is my number 7. Coming in at number 6, I have the Kaleidos Club Nebula palette in collaboration with Angie. This is what this one looks like. Love this palette so much. The color story is like 10 out of 10. I love these like bright neon, like the green and the blue, even though I'm super intimidated by those colors. I love them. I know Angie likes having deep shades in here, and while they intimidate me a little bit, I really do like having these in my collection. And then I also just absolutely love the Kaleidos metallic shimmer. Like I'm like, is this metallic, is it shimmer, is it foiled? You get the gist. All right, we are into the top 5. I don't know if this is gonna be an unpopular opinion, because I feel like so many people are just like ride or die for Adept, and I love this palette, but it's coming in at number 5, not number 1. It is the Plain Jane Remastered palette. This is what this one looks like. This is absolutely a companion palette for me. If you guys haven't tried Adept shadows, they have a really unique, they have really unique formulas in my opinion. They have really beautiful multi-chrome shades, duochrome shades, and I really just pair this with looks rather than like build a full look from this palette. But I love the addition of having this in my palette. I also have some singles from Adept that I love. That would be my number 5. Coming in at number 4, I know Danessa Myricks is sold on Beautylish as well as Sephora, but I still kind of like consider Danessa Myricks an indie brand, so I included this palette in this video. It is the Lightwork Volume 3 palette. I was not expecting to be as blown away by this palette as I was. What I want to swatch, okay, I'm gonna swatch. Okay, so Polaris is this like cream shadow, and you can set this down as a base. You can pop it on top of some of these shadows to really like, oh, it's not even gonna do it justice. It looks pink and like gold here, but then like in person, I'm seeing like a blue teal. I wish, oh, can I get it to do that? No, I really like, okay. Like I'm seeing like lime green, I'm seeing teal, and then I'm seeing like this pink gold. I like literally can't describe. It's such a unique, interesting shade. And then what's another one? Like literally all of these are just so unique. Let me swatch this shade right here. It's like a red green. Oh, I wonder if, no, that won't. Okay, let me see. That one won't. That's, okay. I'm getting frustrated, but that's okay. Let me just see what, okay. It's like, I'm seeing like green and teal and blue on this as well, but it's not capturing it on camera. Anyway, I believe this was like $85, and I was like, I can't believe I'm spending $85 on this, but in my opinion, it was literally worth every single penny, because I have nothing like these shades in my collection. They are so unique. I really want her holiday release, which is $125, but I like told myself I don't need it. It is an investment, but like literally you do not have other shades like this in your collection, I'm telling you. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't feel like I'm wrong. Coming in at number 3, I finally tried Cleota Cosmetics this year, and this is the Dragon Fruit palette. For me, again, this is more of a companion palette. I've never actually built out a whole look with this palette, but I love the different tones, textures, and finishes in this palette, and I just think it's such a good addition to my palette collection. I don't have shades like this. I don't have colors like this. I don't have duochromes or multi-chromes like this in my collection. Another shade that I used so often in my inner corner was Bubbles. And then I also used Effervescent so much just on my lids this summer. Love this so much. Coming in at number 2, another one from Odin's Eye and another collaboration with Angie. This is the Hella. Is it Hella or Hela? I can't remember. I love this palette so much. The shade Double-Sided, another shade I used so much as an inner corner highlight. It's this really beautiful duochrome. And while I may have initially thought that this was not a color story that I felt like my mind could create a bunch of looks with, I've actually had so much fun and felt so inspired by this palette. And this is one that I purchased, I can't remember when this released, more towards the beginning of the year. This has literally sat in my bathroom all year. Typically I'll like try and use the palette until I feel like I have a good understanding of like my actual review on the palette. I have not put this one back in my palette collection all year because I continue to want this for an inner corner highlight, and then I've just had so much fun. I would have thought like with the green foiled shades, but I have even reached into River and Hellfire more than I expected to, so this one would be my number 2. And then my number 1, I feel like it's gonna be so boring, but this is my most reached for indie palette, so I had to rank it at number 1. It's the Kaleidos Futurism 7 Sashimi City. So this is a neutral palette, so kind of going against what I was saying, but every single shade in here I get use out of. This is a palette that's come traveling with me every single time I wear this palette. Specifically when wearing any of these 2 shades, I get so many compliments. This shade, like, again, probably won't do it justice here, but like it has such micro fine glitter in it, and you can just top this on any look and it will look like you spent hours on your makeup. I just love that shade so much. I love the tones of the neutrals in here, and this is just such a solid palette in my opinion. Kaleidos has such a great formula. This would be my number 1, and after that, those are all of my indie brand eyeshadow palettes and how I would rank them from least favorite to favorite. I would love to know in the comments if you disagree with any of my rankings, if there are favorites that are least favorites for you or vice versa. And again, would love your indie palette recommendations down below. The Sugar Drizzle palette, I forget what brand it's by. I want that palette so bad. But anyway, that's gonna wrap it up for today's video. Thank you guys so much for sticking around to watch. If you have any other palette themed content ideas you would like to see me film, or any other palette theme, any other content ideas in general, let me know in the comments below. Other than that, thank you so much for sticking around to watch today's video and for supporting my channel as you guys always do. I love you guys so much, and I'll catch you in my next video. Bye.